Hello and welcome to JRock's Pop Culture Revolution. This is episode number 15. Can you believe it, folks? Already in the 15th episode here. Did everybody have a great new year? Wow, we're already into 2026, if you can believe that. And today, it's going to be a real fun episode. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite all-time classic movies. And of course, I'm talking about this one right here. Oh my God. Oh God, it says it right there in the name. Oh God from 1977. Classic film starring the late, great George Burns and the late, great John Denver. Now, we're going to get right into it. I remember when this film first came out in 1977, and seeing it for the very first time. Actually, seen it in the movie theater when it first came out. And just a little kid, but man, the movie really had a great impact on me. I mean, I'm watching the film today for the very first time in years. And man, I love the film just as much as ever. It's been years since I've seen it. So let's get into this. Okay. Oh God is a 1977 comedy fantasy. And we're going to get into the fantasy part of what this is. Film that was released on October 7th, 1977. The film starred, as I said, George Burns, a legendary actor and comedian, and singer John Denver, who was huge at the time. Okay, now, the film was directed by another comedy legend. Of course, I'm talking about Carl Reiner. Oh God was based on a novel by Ari Corman, which was turned into a screenplay by screenwriter Larry Shelburne, who at the time was best known for writing the MASH TV series, and he also would write the script for Tootsie, a big blockbuster film starring Dustin Hoffman, another legendary actor. So again, the people behind this film were really kind of big players at the time. Now let's get into Carl Reiner and why he wanted to direct the film. Carl Reiner, who of course is a legend in his own right, of course, father of a now late and great Rob Reiner, who many of us first, I'm talking about Rob Reiner now, first came to see as Michael Stivic as Archie Bunker's bleeding heart liberal son-in-law on All in the Family, in the 1970s. But getting back to his dad, Carl Reiner, who, from what I understand, Rob Reiner was very close to his dad, and that was because of his dad's success as a director. That had a lot to do with Rob Reiner wanting to become a director, which he eventually did. Now, Carl Reiner wanted to direct Oh God because he liked the fact that the script dealt with religion in a thoughtful, respectful way, and not really in a mocking way. And let's talk about that for a little bit, folks, because when you do a film talking about religion, there are certain expectations. I mean, because people take their religion pretty serious. It doesn't matter talking about Christians or Catholics or whatever religion may be. People take it pretty serious. And so when people go see a film about religion, they want it to be done in a respectful way. They don't want to see a movie where they think people are making fun of their religion or they're doing it in a really kind of disrespectful way. And so that was one of the things behind the scenes that Carl Reiner and Universal Pictures, who put out the film, really focused a lot of their time on. They're like, okay, we're going to have this movie where George Burns is playing the role of God, but we don't want to make too many jokes about God. We wanted this to be a comedy, but we got to do it in a really respectful way. And I think they really accomplished that. That's one of the things that really made this film so strong, because it was great comedy throughout the entire film, but they did it in such a respectful way. Okay, and so that's a very key point to this picture. Reiner also loved the fact that the comedy was gentle, conversational, and human. Again, when you're doing a film, centers around religion, the church, or something like that, you also want to not come across as too preachy, You're just kind of trying to tell your story. And again, they really accomplished that here. Carl Reiner also loved the fact that the film relied on ideas and dialogue rather than special effects. Now, in the 1970s, 1980s, special effects were a big thing in the movie industry and all the big blockbuster movies. I mean, even, probably the big blockbuster from 1977 was not Oh God, but it was Star Wars. And a film like Star Wars really, one of the main key ingredients to the success of that film was all the special effects in it. But Oh God did not really require any special effects. It was heavy on the comedy, and I think that's why the film works so well. There is that. Carl Reiner was chosen to direct Oh God, because he had already created the Dick Van Dyke Show by the mid 1970s. He directed films like The Jerk and Where's Papa. So by the time the Oh God is being made in the mid 1970s, and they're looking for a director, they think, hey, Carl Reiner, he's a guy we should check out. He's already has a huge level of success. That he's been able to showcase, in his career. So he was really, I think, the right man for a film like this. And he knew the importance of having a film that was loaded up on the comedy. And if you're going to have a film that's kind of centered around and deals with religion, but you got to do it in a respectful way. You can't mock religion. You can't make fun of it, because then half of the audience that are coming to see the film may very well walk out of a movie theater or give it a thumbs down just because they think, you were not respectful towards their religion. So again, that was a key element to this. And yet the film, I think, was very successful because it featured what all successful films need. It was heavy on the comedy. I really love going to see comedy of any kind, stand-up comedy. That's one reason I loved watching classic TV sitcoms from the 1970s and 80s. They were heavy on the comedy. I mean, every Tuesday night I used to tune into Happy Days, and I knew I was going to laugh. I knew by the end of the episode I was going to laugh about something and just be talking about the episode for days and days. And as it turns out now in 2025, I'm still talking about some of these favorite classic TV episodes. Three's Company, Laverne and Shirley, The Jeffersons, All in the Family. We could go on, but heavy on the comedy. And that's one of the things I loved about Oh God. It was really heavy on the comedy. Okay, and so let's really get into talking some more about this film. Okay, the studio knew that Reiner could handle the balance of doing a film about a controversial subject such as God without being offensive. And again, if you're going to do a film where you're talking about God Almighty, the almighty powerful one, you got to do it in a respectful way. You can't look like you're making fun of God or even questioning God. Although in this film, that's one of the heavy things featured throughout the entire story of the film is John Denver's character of Jerry Landers. He's not too heavy on the religion at the beginning of the film. He's not too heavy on going to church. He's not too heavy on the religion. And then he meets George Burns, who introduces himself as God. Okay. And then throughout the film, Jerry is questioning religion. He's questioning God, the existence of God. He starts telling people how he is God's messenger. He's the chosen one. People start to think he's crazy and all this stuff. And so throughout the film, there is a lot of people questioning, does God really exist? So that's a big portion of the film. Okay. Now, Universal Pictures, like I said, believed Carl Reiner had the experience to make a film about God for that very reason. And you want to make sure when doing a film on religion, talking about God, don't make it too serious. Don't make it too preachy. Find that kind of balance where you're heavy on the comedy. You're it's lighthearted. It's nothing like where you make people feel bad about themselves or anything like that, or they're a bad person because they don't believe. Um, Again, you just want to be heavy on the comedy. I think I've made that point. Okay, you don't want to make it too jokey, too offensive, where people really think you're making fun of their religion. And you got to be respectful on people who do believe. I mean, there are plenty of people maybe who don't believe in religion, don't believe in God. That's their choice. You got freedom of religion, as they say in this country, but you also don't want to offend the people that do believe. So again, it's about finding that heavy balance, and being able to do a film like this. Um, so again, and I think they really kind of, accomplished that. Now, George Burns, of course, stars as an elderly almighty God himself. Now, it's funny as the film is starting. Jerry Landers, who's played by the late great singer John Denver. He gets a card. Somehow he receives this card. Hey, you've got an interview with God on such and such a day, which I guess is a following day, and he questions. No, he starts thinking it's his friend that always is playing practice. His friend Artie, I believe it is. He's always playing practical jokes on him. He's like, oh, this must. He's telling his wife, must be Artie playing on a joke. I mean, I got things to do at work. I'm not gonna go and see what this is. But he eventually he gets curious enough. Who would have the gall to tell him to meet me for an interview? Um, go meet God for an interview. And so he starts to really think about who could be behind this little joke. Is it his friend? Is it somebody else? So he shows up for the address on the card. He shows up to the room, which I believe is 2700. And then first there's this voice that comes over the intercom, and Jerry is sitting in an empty office building, just a chair and an intercom. The office is very kind of empty. It's not your typical messy looking office or anything like that. So he's all alone in the room, and then this voice comes over the intercom. It's the voice of George Burns, and he's like, Jerry's like, okay, okay, what's going on here? What's going on? He's like, hey, Jerry, I'm God. And Jerry, of course, starts to question this, and he's like, wait a minute. Well, you can't be God. And then he's like, okay. He's like, look, he goes, this isn't really my voice. This is a voice. I'm pretending. This is my voice. I'm pretending to have this voice, so you can kind of understand what I'm going to say, so we can communicate. And for the longest time, Jerry's really questioning things. Um, and then also when he's driving in his car, God kind of appears talking to Jerry through the radio. Jerry goes home and he tells his wife about his experience meeting God. God talked to him over radio. Of course, his wife thinks he's crazy. He starts telling the story of how God chose him as his messenger, and that he's here to spread God's message and get the word out about God and stuff. And so the more and more people that he tells his story to, he eventually goes to a news reporter at a religious paper, um, saying, "Hey, I got this experience where God chose me. I'm a chosen one by God. I'm here to deliver His message." Even the reporter kind of is questioning, this guy's crazy, and it's kind of funny because eventually Jerry is persistent in delivering his message. He gets the guy to at least print an article telling him that, hey, this guy came into me, Jerry Landers. He says that he's a chosen one. He's here to deliver God's message. He starts getting all this unwanted attention. People start, it's 50-50, like people hanging out in front of his house, people that think he's crazy, people that want to meet him because they want to meet God. They want Jerry to introduce them to God and all this crazy stuff. And they get in all these crazy predicaments. But the film is just really heavy on the comedy. Okay, as I said, John Denver as the average everyday supermarket manager, Jerry Landers, chosen by God to deliver his message. And what's kind of sad is Jerry's a family man, but he's got a daughter and a son, and because of his stories about God and being the chosen one, the other kids at school start to make fun of his kids. The kids start thinking dad is crazy. He picks them up at school one day. They don't want to go in dad's car because the other kids are making fun of their dad. Dad's become a real embarrassment. And his wife starts to really question if her husband Jerry is crazy or what's going on. And it's just kind of, again, I love the way they deal with the religion, the comedy, heavy on the comedy. I don't know what else to say there. Now, Terry Garr played the role of Jerry's loving, doubtful, skeptical wife. Bobby, Jerry's skeptical wife, Bobby Landers. She thinks he's crazy and does not believe in his claims of being the chosen one, or that he's talked to God. And now here's some fun trivia I discovered about Oh God. Originally, Carl Reiner had wanted to cast Mel Brooks as God and Woody Allen as Jerry, but that did not obviously happen. Now, I could kind of see, Mel Brooks in the role of God, but I think George Burns was the right choice. And who knows? I mean, maybe Mel Brooks would have been a great God, but George Burns is what we got, and I'm glad we did. He just it was so great in the role of God. Oh God! Now, some more fun facts here. Oh God interrupted Star Wars' 15 weeks at number one for 1 week in 1977 before Star Wars would reclaim its number one spot the following week. I mean, okay, so even in 1977, Oh God for 1 week beat Star Wars in the number one spot as being the most popular film that was out that week over Star Wars. And then Star Wars became number one again the following week. So some real fun trivia there for you folks. Now, some more fun trivia here. I always love learning about this stuff. It's interesting not just to talk about some of our favorite classic movies, but to maybe sometimes when I do this research, we discover people that were often maybe kind of thought of to appear in these films and they turned it down for whatever reason. Johnny Carson was originally asked to take part in Oh God, but he turned the offer down because he thought it would interfere with him as a talk show host hosting the Tide Show. Excuse me, folks. Excuse me. Excuse me. So, anyways, one more time. Sorry, folks. Sorry. But anyways, so they got another popular talk show host in 1977 to take over a role that was offered to Johnny Carson. Of course, talking about Dinah Shore. Now, Dinah Shore does appear in the movie, and where she appears in the movie is actually hosting an episode of the Dinah Shore show, her popular talk show at the time. John Denver as Jerry Landers comes on the Dinah Shore show to tell his story about meeting God. And now, as I said, Oh God does a great job of not mocking religion or God or any of that. But Dinah Shore and the Dinah Shore show, they were mocking Jerry Landers. She did not believe his claims that he was a chosen one or that he met God or anything like that. And so, as her previous guest before Jerry comes on the Dinah Shore show that day, they'd had a police sketch artist, and so Dinah Shore jokingly tells the sketch artist, "Okay, we're going to have Jerry describe what God looks like. We're going to have you sketch God for our audience so they can see what God looks like." Now, of course, amazingly enough, Jerry Landers describes God to a T that the sketch artist creates that old elderly looking man that looks identical to George Burns. So again, they were trying to mock him, and yet it was a funny part of the film. You got to see it to respect it and to know what I'm talking about it. But it was one of the best scenes in the whole entire film. And Oh God became one of the top grossing pictures of 1977, which also included Star Wars, Smokey and the Bandit, and Saturday Night Fever. These were all popular films from 1977. 1977 was a great year for film, folks. You had Star Wars. It was really competing against Saturday Night Fever, two very different type of blockbuster films. Saturday Night Fever, of course, was really what kind of launched John Travolta fever in 1977. The Bee Gees, with Staying Alive, Staying Alive, ooh, 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 Staying Alive. Take that, man. Going back to the time machine, I tell you, folks, it's like it's 1977 all over again. And Oh God was a part of what was going on in 1977. It was one of the top grossing films for a year. So, there's that. Oh God also cemented George Burns' Hollywood comeback. Now, George Burns, we should talk about for a little bit, folks, because he was a legendary comedian and actor at the time. Very early on in his career, he had a TV show with his wife, the late, great Gracie Allen. Gracie Allen died relatively young. And so after her passing, George Burns kind of retired. He didn't do anything for several years. And then with the success of the Oh God movie, there were two other movies following this. There was, of course, Oh God Book 2 and Oh God You Devil, which is the final one of these films, came out in 1984. I should mention that the other two films feature or star George Burns, but John Denver is only featured in the original film, Oh God, that we talked about here today from 1977. So if you like Oh God, I suggest you go check out the other two films, which you can still get on DVD. I plan to do that myself, and hopefully we'll be doing a future episode of both those movies down the line. But I want to start talking about Oh God. So that's what we're doing here today in episode 15. Okay, folks, and let's see. Now let's talk about why George Burns was chosen to play the role of God. Okay, Burns was known for his dry, gentle humor, and like I said in the beginning of tonight's episode, you're doing a film on talking about God and religion. You got to have that kind of humor to handle the conversations, the topic, and he was that's why he was perfect for this role. George Burns had a calm, grandfatherly presence. So I think whoever you're going to have play the role of God, it's got to be, can't be somebody super young. I mean, God's been around for millions and millions of years. So you need to have an elderly figure. And I think that's why George Burns works so well in the role of God. Okay. George Burns was also chosen for this role because he was well-known, respected actor, comedian with decades-long career. He'd been doing this for many decades at this point. John Denver was chosen to play Jerry Landers because he was a popular singer and songwriter at the time, in 1977. And then let's talk about what a talented singer and songwriter he was. I mean, all these years later, 2025, we're still talking about John Denver and George Burns, but let's talk specifically about John Denver. His songs are still being played on the radio. And let's talk about some of his songs, okay? Probably my most favorite's got to be, like many people, Rocky Mountain High. And then, interesting enough, trivia fact here for you folks. Another one of my favorite all-time John Denver songs is "Leaving on a Jet Plane." Now, interesting kind of trivia fact. Talking about what a prolific songwriter John Denver was. Again, he had no way of knowing what laid ahead for him in the future, but "Leaving on a Jet Plane" was his first #1 song, and ironically enough, that's the very way he sadly died. He died in a horrific jet plane crash. His private jet plane he had, it went down. It was an experimental plane, and sadly, that's how he went down. And again, there's just something prolific about that song now. The fact that it was his first #1 hit song, and that's how he went out. He died. I mean, wow. Sometimes people just no way John Denver could have known he was going to die in a plane crash, but that song kind of takes on a new meaning. That's the point I'm trying to make here, folks. Okay, so as far as why he was chosen to play the role of Jerry Landers, like I said, besides being a popular singer-songwriter in 1977, he had a wholesome, sincere image, which is, I think, anybody going to play a role like this, you got to come across as somebody that's pretty sincere. Somebody you don't want somebody that's looks like a crook or looks like they can't be trusted. Somebody maybe had a criminal background or something. They're not gonna do too well in a role like this because you need to have somebody who has a real wholesome image to play a part like this. And John Denver, he really fit the part. And then also John Denver, the main reason he fit the part so well, he was just, despite his success in the music industry at the time, being such a successful singer-songwriter, he was a relatable guy. He seemed like an ordinary man. Everyday ordinary man could relate to a guy like this. And that's why he was able to pull off this role. I really do believe that. Okay, so okay, the film's most now this is a fun part of the film I love talking about. Let's talk about some of the film's most memorable quotes, and these are all things that George Burns and the role of God says throughout the film. Okay, if you want me, look inside. I don't run things. You do. I gave you brains. Use them. Miracles are not my department anymore. If you don't believe in me, you believe in belief. I'm not what you think I am. I get blamed for a lot of things I never did. And again, these are all lines, all quotes that George Burns' character God makes throughout the film, and they're just some of the most memorable lines. And you really can't help but pay attention when these things are said throughout the film. So before we wrap up, tonight's episode, I thought it would also be fun to talk a little bit about what else was going on in the world in 1977. Well, Jimmy Carter was the president of the United States, just for anyone who was wondering, okay? July 11th, Martin Luther King was awarded after his death, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. June 26, 1977, for all you rock and roll fans, this will be a date you will not want to soon forget. Elvis Presley performed his final concert in Indianapolis, Indiana. Wow. Elvis Presley, king of rock and roll. We're still listening to his music in 2025, all these years later, man. Okay, and now, to end things, before we really finally wrap it up tonight, I thought it'd be fun to kind of give you guys a list of what were some of the most popular TV shows that were on TV in 1977. These were all things I was watching. These are all things that are on my list as far as favorite classic TV sitcoms from the 1970s. Okay, you had Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Three's Company, The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, Hollywood Squares, a great game show. Again, man, I have loved looking back on this classic film from 1977, folks, starring George Burns and John Denver. Man, what talking about dynamic duels. These guys were man, they just had a great chemistry together, and that's why this film works. Now, I have seen the other two God films, and I got to say that the original one, like oftentimes when we talk about making sequels, I liked all three films, but the original one really stands out because I think with the first film, like a lot of films where you have sequels, I think John Denver and George Burns, they had great chemistry. They were great in the movie together, and I'm not sure why that John Denver wasn't in the other film. I don't know films. Maybe he was unable to do it. Maybe he was on tour. Maybe he wanted more money and the studio didn't want to pay what he was asking. Who knows? We'll maybe look into that in future episodes. But man, they were just so great together. And again, I think when you have a successful film like this, you have people who want to kind of duplicate the success, and you're not always able to duplicate it, especially if you're not able to get all the key players that were involved in the original success, the original movie. And I think the one thing, even though the other two films starred George Burns, I think what was really missing in the other two films was the presence of John Denver. And of course, they used other characters in the other two films, and that's fine. And I still love seeing the other two films, but very very much like with a lot of classic films that have sequels. I mean, American Graffiti is a great example of that. Great classic film. Many people will say it sparked that movie sparked the idea for Happy Days. It was a big influence, at least on Gary Marshall creating Happy Days. Years down the line, but a few years ago, I was amazed to learn there actually was an American Graffiti Part Two. But again, it was nowhere near the box office hit that the original film was. So that is often the case when talking about sequels. Again, folks, if you want to get this, go to Amazon, and you can actually get all three films. That's where I got this one. I think you get it for like $7.99 or something like that. Starring the late great George Burns. And the other fun thing I might add before wrapping it up for tonight that is often the case when watching some of these old films, you can kind of see how the world has really remarkably changed since 1977. I mean, in the film, like you don't see like any modern day computers. There's no laptops or anything like that. There's no presence of like CDs or floppy disk or anything like that. You see like old kind of style TVs, old style kind of automobiles, but that's another fun aspect of watching these old films. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to episode 15 tonight, where we talked all about the classic 1977 film starring John Denver and George Burns, of course, once again, oh God. And I am your host, Jason JRock Houston. And I thought, folks, in a few days when we get together, do episode number 16, we're gonna talk about some of my all-time favorite episodes. What I call my list of the most memorable episodes from some of my favorite TV sitcoms. I mean, there's some episodes where, for different reasons, you just cannot get out of your head. I mean, like, I'll just give you an example of what I'm talking about. For example, the episode of Archie Bunker's place where Edith Bunker dies. That's one of those things I remember when it happened. Like, it really touched my heart here, thinking, oh my God, Archie found Edith dead. So we're going to be talking about some of those episodes from our favorite TV sitcoms that really kind of touched me, and really to this day that I just kind of still think of these episodes, and they really had a major kind of impact, or really impacted me in a huge way. So I look forward to doing that. Thanks again, folks. Take care. See you again real soon. Bye for now.